Namaskar everyone and welcome to the Gita Satsang. So as it is already time, we'll get started. Let us do the prarthana. By the Guru's grace and the will of Sri Krishna, we have all assembled for this Gita Satsang. May we have their guidance to be able to learn and adopt the things which will help us to grow spiritually. Let us chant the shlokas. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Krishnaya Vasudevaya Haraye Paramatmane Pranatah Kleshanashaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Namostu Te Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullara Vindaya Tapatra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Ramanujadaya Patram Jnana Vairagyabhushanam Srimad-Venkatanathāryam Vande Vedanta Deshikam Yo Nityamachyutapadambuja Yugma Rugma Vyamohatastaditarani Trinaya Mene Asmadguror Bhagavatosya Dayaika Sindhoho Ramanujasya Charanau Sharanam Prapadye. So with prayers at the lotus feet of the Acharyas, let us start our satsang topic for today. So in the previous satsang, we had come up to the 71st shloka of the second chapter. So today we are going to see the same second chapter's last shloka, that is shloka number 72. Krishna has been explaining to Arjuna a lot of different things in the second chapter, and in this concluding shloka, he expresses what is the, final summary like of whatever he has explained to Arjuna throughout that chapter. So in the 72nd shloka, Lord Krishna is saying, Esha Brahmi Sthiti Parthaha Nainam Prapya Vimuhyati Sthitva Syamanta Kalepi Brahma Nirvana Mrichati. So he's saying, O Partha, this is the state, such is the state of an enlightened soul, that having attained that state, one is never again deluded. So this state is such that after attaining this state, nobody ever gets lost or gets into the state of ignorance or getting confused. Deluded means confused. So being established in this consciousness, even at the hour of death, one is liberated from the cycle of life and death and reaches the supreme abode of God. Such a person who is in this kind of a state, even if he gets to that state at the time of his death, at the hour of death, he will be liberated from the cycle of birth and death, and such a person will get what is called as nirvana, attains the supreme abode of the Lord. So here in our context, nirvana means as what we are calling as moksha. In other religions like in Buddhism and all, the meaning for the word nirvana is something else. But here it is used, this word nirvana is used in the sense of getting liberated from the cycle of Janma Mrityu. So what is Krishna explaining here? He says, in this state. So what is this state that Krishna has been talking about? So when he says this state, means the person who is at the level of performing karma yoga. So karma yoga, karma means actions. So karma yoga, that is doing actions in a particular way. So what exactly is the karma yoga that Krishna is talking about? A sangha karma yoga, the kind of karma yoga where there is no attachment. So what is this? What does it involve? It involves performing actions without any desire for the phala, without having any expectation of a particular outcome. Performing actions with no sense of doership and no sense of ownership of the action. I am doing this. I want to get this particular phala. By doing this, I am getting so and so punya. None of these thoughts, none of these intentions should be present when the person is doing the action. So if you do actions in this kind of a manner, it is called as karmayoga. And a person who does actions in this manner will attain Atma Darshanam. So when a person gets that Atma Darshana, then he is said to have reached to an enlightened state. So this kind of a person is not affected by dualities. He is not caught between the two extremes. So there is no joy and sorrow. There is no mental turmoil. There is no confusion. There is no feeling of depression regarding anything that happens in that life. So what Krishna is telling here, he says, even at the hour of death, being established in this consciousness means having this kind of a mindset of doing actions without expectation for the phala, of doing action without thinking that I am the doer. So this kind of a mindset, even if you get it at the hour of death. Now, actually, the ideal state would be to have this kind of an attitude throughout one's life. But unfortunately, what may happen, we may not have come to that stage earlier in our life. We may not be at that stage throughout our life. But even if we have not practiced this during our entire life, even if you get that attitude at the time when your life is about to end, right? Still, it will give its benefit. And such a person who has attained this kind of a mental state will be liberated, will get moksha, will be liberated from the cycle of birth and death. So what do you mean by saying they will be liberated from the cycle of birth and death? It means they are not going to be born again. They will reach the loka, Vaikunta loka, and they will stay there as eternal servants of the Lord. So this kind of a liberation will come for a person who has this kind of an attitude of karma yoga. So here, what is there for us to understand how it is practically important for us? Many times when we are hearing of this, we realize that all this time we have been doing actions thinking that I want a particular outcome. We have been doing actions thinking that I am the doer. I am doing this for myself. I want to get this particular XYZ benefit out of it. So we have always been doing like that. Even now, just because intellectually we have understood doesn't mean that we are able to follow every time the concept of karma yoga. But even now, it is not too late. Even now, we can keep trying to do all our actions as karma yoga. So what is that? Performing all actions as karma yoga means what we have to do. We have to perform actions for the good of others. But when I do those actions, it must be done selflessly. Selflessly means I should not have any selfish interest in that. I should not do a particular action because it's going to be of benefit to me. I must do actions which are going to bring good to other people, which are going to help others, but without any selfish interest in that. I must perform actions without the sense of doership. That means I should not think that I am doing this, I have planned this, I am going to execute in a particular way. Rather, one must do with the bhava that God has given me the opportunity to do this. God is going to get it done through me. Whatever is being done is done by God himself. I am just a madhyama. I am just an instrument in his hands, and he is getting it done through me. And of course, there should be no desire for any fruit, any phala for oneself. So when we get this kind of an attitude and we act with this kind of an attitude, then we will also attain the state of a sthita prajna. You remember we said Arjuna had asked, who is a sthita prajna? So that state of not wanting any personal self-centered self-interest, the state of mind where you are in equanimity, where you are not moved by joy and sorrow. This kind of an attitude we will attain if we practice these steps of karma yoga. Now, there are people who look at life and they say, oh, it is full of sadness. There is no joy anywhere. There's nothing. It's only a totally, ocean of sorrow and like that. If we think of our life like that, then we will only get depressed. It will lead to depression because then you feel everything, there is no hope for anything. There is nothing to be done in this world. What can I do? I'm so helpless. Everything is always bad. When we have that kind of an attitude, that is not going to be conducive to our sadhana, isn't it? So it will lead us to depression. There are some people who go to the other extreme and they say, oh, life is a challenge. I have to take this challenge and like that. So when you say life is a challenge, then it makes you feel ambitious. when it makes you feel ambitious, when it gets you caught up in the cycle of doing something to attain something. And that inevitably will lead to the sense of ahambhava, the sense of doership, the sense of claiming, ownership of the action. And ultimately, if we go on that path, we are doing all the time. We may be doing a lot of things, but ultimately we think that we are the doer. So that egoism also will grow there, and that ahankara will come, mamakara will come, that this is mine, I am doing. Ahankara will also come, that I am the one who is doing. And then once that ahankara is there, there is no understanding of the idea that I am not this body. You remember in the last satsang we had said that what is this ahankara? The thought that I am this body, not realizing that the Atma is the I. That sense of identifying oneself with the body, that is what is ahankara. So if we see our life as a challenge and we take it, very ambitiously, and we are all the time involved with actions for doing good for ourselves and with expectation of some outcome, we will ultimately end up in the state of being very egoistic. So that is also not good. So what is the attitude that will help us to go ahead? Only when we learn to look at life as an opportunity to attain the Lord. When we have this realization, when we understand very deeply that I am not this Sharira, I am the Atma. It is the purpose of my life is to attain Paramatma. It is not to get more and more benefits in this world. It is not to enjoy things in this world. It is not to seek joy in the objects of this world. That is not the purpose of my life. The purpose of my life, I have got this human janma, which is very rare. I have got this human janma where I got satsanga of so many like-minded people who are taking me closer towards God. I have got this janma because of purva janma karmas. Because I have done some punyas in past janmas, I have got this opportunity. So why this opportunity has been given to me? Firstly, to have Atma Sakshatkara, to understand the nature of my own Atma. And once we do that, we will automatically attain the desire, we will acquire the desire to attain the Lord. So this Janma has been given to me as an opportunity to get liberated from this constant cycle of birth and death. And that is how I will attain the Lord. So if I look at life like that, then I will be very focused on the fact that I have to do all my actions as karmayoga. So now that this was the last shloka, the 72nd shloka is the last shloka of the second chapter. So as always, we need to understand what is the important, how great is this chapter, this entire second chapter. So first we will look at overall one overview of what was there in the second chapter very briefly. And then we will go to understand the Mahatmya, which is given in the Padma Purana. So we saw it in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it was entirely a discourse, it was entirely a description of Arjuna's state. Arjuna, at the beginning, he was very confident, and the two armies were standing facing each other. And Arjuna told Krishna that take me to the center of the battlefield, take me to the spot so that I can see who are all lined up against us. And Krishna very strategically takes Arjuna and puts him right in front of Bhishma and Drona. Had Krishna placed the chariot in front of Duryodhana and Dushasana, Arjuna would have been moved by anger and thoughts of vengeance, right? And he would have fought right away, probably. But very smartly, because Krishna wanted to clear the confusion of Arjuna, because Krishna knew what was deep within the heart of Arjuna, and Krishna wanted to give Upadesha through Arjuna to all of us confused souls. Very smartly, Krishna took and placed the chariot in front of Bhishma and Drona. The minute Arjuna looked at Bhishma and Drona, what happened to him? He got emotional. He said, these are all my own people. How can I fight against them? How can I bring myself to lift up arms against them? It is better that I will go away, take sannyasa and go away. Why do I want this Rajya? If I fight in this war, everybody is going to be killed. And then once they are killed, then what is the purpose? Everything will degenerate. There will be nobody to live in this Rajya. I don't want such a Rajya. I will rather give up my right to the throne. I will go away. And he refuses to fight. He feels totally confused and depressed, and he throws down his Gandiva and he sits down like that. Now, Krishna starts speaking from the second chapter onwards, and he says that why has this kind of a weakness come upon you? It does not suit you. You are a kshatriya. And you are a kshatriya who has a great name and fame. So if you run away from the battlefield, you will lose whatever image you had. You will lose your very identity. And by running away from the battlefield, you will have given up your dharma. As a kshatriya, it is your dharma to fight and to oppose whatever evil is there in the society. You need to give a good rajya to the people. So if you run away, you may think that you are doing good to them by not killing these people, but then that will be shirking your responsibility. So you have to fight. So Krishna starts explaining to Arjuna from the 12th shloka onwards about different things. So first, Krishna explains to Arjuna about the Atma, how the Atma is Nitya, it is eternal. It cannot be killed, it cannot be wetted by water, it cannot be burned by fire. It is everlasting and eternal. Then Krishna explains, you remember, about how just as a person gives up and discards old clothes and wears new clothes, similarly, the Atma also gives up one body and takes up the new body. The Sharira is prone to degeneration, degradation, but the Atma is not having that. The Atma is always there, and it takes up one body after the other in order to attain its final state. So, if you have to understand this nature, O Arjuna, you understand this nature of the Atma. And when you understand this nature of the Atma, you will not grieve for all these people. And you must understand that it is your duty to do whatever is your role as a Kshatriya. And when you do actions with that bhava, without sense of doership, understanding that you are doing your part in whatever is the scheme of things, without any expectation of a particular outcome for yourself, then when you do that with such a bhava, you will get Atma Sakshatkara. When you keep performing karma yoga in this manner, those actions will cleanse your mind. And as your mind becomes clean and purified, your antakarana becomes purified, slowly you will be able to control your sense organs. Right now, your senses are running here and there. There are so many desires which are there. And your mind is running behind whatever the senses are asking for. And that is why there is so much kalaha in your mind. There is so much turmoil in your mind. So if you want to give up that mental turmoil, if you want to attain peace, your mind has to be brought under control. And to bring your mind under control, you have to make sure it does not run behind the senses. Then to avoid all this, what is it to be done? As long as the senses are there, they will run behind sense objects. But we must get to the state where although our mind, our senses come in contact with the sense objects, they are unaffected by it. So we saw in so many of the shlokas how the acharyas explained that it is very difficult for us to connect with the sense objects and not want to enjoy them. So what is the solution for that? We saw that we transfer all those sense enjoyments, we transfer all that to the Lord. So instead of seeing other things and wanting joy out of that, I learn to look at the Lord's form and get joy from that. So for every one of my senses, I give attachment to the Lord and activities connected to Him. So I use my eyes to see the form of the Lord. I use my ears to hear the glories of the Lord. I use my tongue to sing the glories of the Lord. I use my hands, my feet, I use all my body parts to perform seva to the Lord. So when we keep doing like this and without any sense of ownership, without any expectation of an outcome, then by performing such actions repeatedly, this is what is karma yoga. When I keep doing all these actions, whether it is actions which involve devotion to the Lord or it is actions in my worldly life, when I do them without expectation of the result, when I do them with the bhava that Lord is getting it done through me, then that becomes karma yoga. When I repeatedly perform actions in this manner, then the mind gets cleansed. And when the mind gets cleansed, that mind will come under control. And this kind of a person who has mind control becomes a jnani. Now we saw how later, just one moment please. We saw how such a kind of jnani, Arjuna is very curious. He wants to know. He asked, no, Sthita Prajnasya ka bhasha. what is this person's characteristics, how does he speak, how does he sit, what does he do, like that. So then Krishna explains about how a person becomes a jnani, how he learns to ignore the impulses coming from his senses, how he does that by attaching his mind to the Lord. So, like this, Krishna, throughout this second chapter, right from explaining initially about the Nitya nature of the Atma to the need for performing karma with the right bhava, to how such a person with proper karma who does karma yoga becomes a jnani, and what are the characteristics of this jnani, how such a person who has this kind of jnana and no complete lack of mental turmoil, person who is totally at peace, such a person only will get shanti. So after explaining all this, Krishna has now come to the state of this last shloka where he says that if you attain this kind of a mental state, it will cause you to get liberated, it will give you moksha, it will make sure that you are not caught up anymore in the cycle of birth and death. So this is the second chapter. It is the largest, probably one of the largest chapters rather. And not only it is big, right? It is a big chapter, 72 shlokas are there. Also, the content in it is not so simple. It is a little tough at times to understand exactly what Krishna is trying to explain. But then, thanks to the acharyas, we have been able to at least understand some parts of that. Now we have to be able to practice that in our life. So at the end of every chapter, as usual, we need to understand, it is explained what is the mahatmya of this chapter, what is the greatness of this chapter, and that mahatmya is told so that it impresses on our mind the importance of understanding that chapter, of reciting that chapter, of getting inspiration from that particular thing. So in the Padma Purana, there is a conversation which is given between Lord Vishnu and Mahalakshmi Devi. So in that conversation, there's a description about, and there will be one story which is told. And through that story, we are explained the importance of that particular chapter. So for the second chapter, when the discussion is going on, Lord Vishnu explains to Lakshmi Devi, in a place in Pandharpur. We all of us are familiar with this place called Pandharpur, which is in Maharashtra. So in Pandharpur, there was a Brahmana called Devya Shama. He did all rituals. He followed everything what was told to him. But somehow he always felt that he didn't have any tripti. He didn't have any satisfaction and contentment. So one day what happened is, because he was so much in turmoil, he decided that, okay, whatever I'm doing is not giving me any benefit. Let me ask somebody for guidance. So he met a Muni, a God realized soul. And he met the Muni and asked him for advice. So that Muni advised him. He said, there is a person called Mitravan who is there living on the banks of the Godavari Nadi. You go and meet this Mitravan and he will guide you about how you can get contentment in your life. So this Devya Shama went there and he saw that this Mitravan was a person who was herding a flock of goat. Like you have cow herd, like that he was a goat herd. He used to take care of the goats and take them here and there for grazing. The minute he saw Mitravan, however, he knew that he was a realized soul because there was a look of Brahma Tejas on his face and he was completely at peace. So immediately as soon as he met him, Devya Shama asked him his question. He said, I'm doing all these rituals, I'm doing everything which is told in the Shastras, and still I'm not able to have satisfaction and contentment in my life. So then Mitravan told him one story. He said, you can see all these goats which are there. I'm, taking care of them. Once there was a tiger which chased my goats and chasing all the goats. Finally, the other goats all escaped. There was just one goat and this tiger was just about to pounce on that goat. And that was going to happen outside one temple. So the minute that tiger and the goat both reached that spot, suddenly the tiger stopped. The next moment it would have pounced on the goat, but it stopped. And the goat which was running away, that goat also stopped there. And both of them looked at each other, totally very peaceful, totally not, the goat didn't have any fear. The tiger lost its, feeling that I want to eat up this goat. And they were both surprised. So they spoke to each other. Now this Mitravan had followed that goat to see what happens. And he was watching all this. So the tiger and the goat spoke to each other. And they they had suddenly a recollection of their past life. So in the past life, this goat in the past life had been a pishachi, and that pishachi had caught hold of the hunter. That hunter is the one who was now the tiger. So in the past Janma, there was a pishachi which had caught hold of a hunter. Now their roles were reversed in this Janma. That hunter had now become the tiger, and that pishachi which had caught hold of that hunter had now become the goat. So there it was the pishachi which caught the hunter. Now it was the tiger who was trying to eat up the goat. So they remembered that this was what our relationship was in the past Janma. And yet now, so it was that karma which had pulled both of them into this kind of a situation, right? And yet now, standing here in front of each other, in front of that particular temple, they had no desire to harm each other. That tiger did not feel the desire to kill that goat. And the goat did not have any fear that, oh, the tiger is going to kill me. So they wondered why. And then they noticed that this Mitravan had come there. So they asked Mitravan. And then Mitravan noticed that there, close by there was a tree, and on that one old wise monkey was sitting there. So they all went to that monkey and they asked him that what is this reason? So then that monkey explained that why is this happening in this particular place? Because all along that tiger had chased the goat and come. But after coming to this particular place, why is it that this kind of a state had come upon both of them? So then the monkey explained that you can see that temple which is there. In that temple, there was one Archaka. And that Archaka, that priest who was worshipping in that temple, had performed all actions. And yet he didn't have mental peace. So he asked advice from one particular saint. And that saint had told him that you recite the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita every day. And once you do that, you will get whatever you are seeking for. So in that temple, every day that Archakar used to recite that second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And by repeated recitation of that Gita, what had happened is the environment around that temple had been charged with so much positive energy, with so much sattvic nature, with so much sattva guna, that when these animals came to that place, they underwent mental transformation. So great is the power of reciting this second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So I hope you understood the whole story which is told to explain the Mahatmya. There was Devya Shama, who didn't have mental peace. He met the Muni. Muni sent him to Mitravan. Mitravan, to answer the question, told this story of the tiger and the goats. And who is it that has told about the greatness of all this? The monkey on the tree. So here you can see that there is so much greatness in reciting the second chapter of the Gita that sattvikata naturally increases when you keep hearing this recitation of the Gita. So not only hearing to it, whether you hear, whether you listen to it, or you yourself chant it, or you contemplate on it and try to live your life as per those concepts, all of that will increase the sattva guna in us, so that we are able to get peace of mind, so that we are able to get to the state. What was the whole purpose of this? That how somebody becomes a sthita prajna, how somebody gets shanti. So only when there is shanti, then there can be further progress towards moksha. So by reciting the second chapter of the Gita every day, we will be able to attain that kind of a mental state, which is the entire purpose of this chapter of the Gita. So let us pray that we have heard, we have studied this second chapter in great detail. It has taken us so many months to understand all the shlokas. So let us pray that Krishna will bless us with the ability to be able to practice. So not only that we recite this chapter and we try to understand it, but also that we should try to adopt these teachings in our life. So let Krishna bless us. We will pray for that and offer Kritagnyata for all these things that we are having the opportunity to learn. So let us offer gratitude at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna and Guru for inspiring us to start and join this satsang. And let us pray for their blessings and grace to always be on us. So we have now come to the end of the second chapter. From next satsang onwards, we will start with the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And hopefully by Krishna's grace, we will be able to understand and go ahead rapidly, without any obstacles, without any tada, without any, problems on our journey, as we get set to understand the next ideas, next set of thoughts which Krishna has explained to Arjuna. So thank you everybody for joining in. We'll meet again next Thursday. In the meantime, as we have come to the end of the second chapter, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts in your mind about whatever we talked about in these past satsangs of the second chapter, please send your questions or queries, whatever it may be. Thank you, Pramila ji. Thank you, Zarna ji. Thank you, Chudamani Mami. So we will meet again next Thursday and start the third chapter of the Bhagavad Geeta. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll stop here for now. Namaskar.